Interesting conversations with this family.
Yeah, we even got there.
Exactly.
That's all you're doing.
Okay, before we start looking at this chapter, I was thinking it would be good to watch 3 debates. However, we will not watch those on Wednesday. It's going to be a different night. So, since you're the faithful ones, what night do you think would work best? And we're going to watch one this month, one next month, and one in May, is my plan. So I was thinking either Friday night at 7 or Saturday night at, say, 6.
How long are they?
They're about 2 hours each. Ooh. Yeah.
I don't know how past his bedtime that is on Saturday night.
Yeah, that's
He does,
past it, yeah.
he does have to show up on Sunday.
That's not past his bedtime.
Can we come into this building on a Saturday? Go to church on a Saturday?
It's your building.
Well, we rented out to the Jehovah's Witnesses on Saturday, so I don't know if we.
They don't meet on Saturday.
So,
They don't meet at all right now, do they?
No, I think it's all
Sunday on the table as an
Zoom.
option to
There'll
show?
probably be
What?
starting
Are you
to.
thinking about Sunday as an option on the table as well, or just
No.
Fridays?
No. Just thinking Friday or Saturday, because that would be, then Sunday, that would be, for some of us, that would be about a 7-hour day then. So, that's
We can't have you doing that.
why I'm suggesting Friday or Saturday and not a Sunday.
Well, Friday, because then we could sleep in on Saturday.
Well, that's, yeah,
And
but I also
don't know how
realize-
that fits with his schedule.
Christie's works late Friday. so
Yeah, that
was-
would be-
It's okay, I can watch it another time.
I know what would work for me. I don't have a preference, so. It would.
So are you opposed to Saturday then, or?
no, we can do Saturday night.
Just stay here and get up on.
Sunday morning, yeah. Well, we could go earlier on Saturday if we want.
It's not a youth retreat, right?
Yeah.
Well,
This is
no,
once
I
a
don't know,
month.
it's us.
Yeah, well, so what my plan is to show one that deals sort of with these first 5 chapters. Show a debate, does God exist? Which would, and then I would like to show one next month on the resurrection. And, what chapter is that in here? I don't know if we'll quite be there or not, because we do cover the resurrection in here. No, well, chapter 9,
Be close.
it'll be close. And then the last one I want to do in May is the one with Dawkins, Hitchens, which actually spans the whole range of this book. It's a very broad debate that covers a lot of these topics that we're looking at, which is why I thought it would be good at the end. So that's what I'm thinking. If no one's opposed, I'm going to lean towards a Saturday one. Bring your, oh no, not your popcorn. Bring your pretzels and your root beer.
Hey, the janitor has the work late then. Gosh, man.
Well, no, we'll just have it set up for Sunday. We'll just be looking at the screen.
The screen.
Yeah, but there'd be chips all over the floor.
Okay,
Something for the kids to,
bring your licorice and your root beer.
Let the chips fall where they may.
I don't care, we can do whatever, I'll clean up, if it needs to clean up, I'm big.
It might affect me in both April and May, because I plan to be gone for about 3 weeks, starting the middle of April, of the 17th, I think.
Well, we'll just do it at your house then it won't mess the church up.
Hey,
I know where you live.
that's when I get home, right?
Well,
I usually try to clean it so it's good when I get home, I don't have to worry about it.
we could maybe run, so you'd be gone from Easter Sunday?
I think, well, yes. There's an Alaska Airlines that goes from Portland to Fort Lauderdale, direct. And that would
Wow.
save me then from having to get in a motel in Portland, well, in Seattle, because I would go to Seattle Saturday then. And then have to stay overnight Saturday night and then go on Sunday. And there are only a couple of those flights at all. I can't even get one like that coming back. I have to go through Seattle. Most of the time I have to go through Seattle, and if there aren't enough seats on that, I have to go through Seattle anyway.
Nobody from Florida wants to come
And
over.
it would be then another day, maybe the 18th. I just have to be in Michigan on the 30th because my grandson has graduated from university there.
That's all right.
And so, but I want to see my daughter and her husband for a couple of weeks there too, and we'll be back in May at a decent time, so I don't know.
Well, what are you doing in
Well,
2023?
We could maybe run the, we could maybe run the resurrection one on the 9th then.
However, on February 28th, I have a dentist appointment. 10 o'clock.
And then we can run the May one later. We're gonna run the May one towards the end of the month anyway. The May one will be later in May.
That'll be okay.
And then we could run the April one on the 9th,
Okay, that'll be okay too.
which I think that would be good, watch the debate on the resurrection just before the start of Holy Week.
There you go.
Okay,
And then this month's, that leaves either the 19th or the 26th.
not doing anything those days.
I'm open.
You're open? I think those, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then let's go the 19th.
19?
It'll give us a couple weeks in between.
And that's at 7, right?
No, that'll be at 6. 6 on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, okay, got it.
2 hours and I'll get back.
6.
Which still allows me to get home in time for my 9 o'clock bedtime, so.
And you're not gonna, you don't have specific dates for the other two then?
Well, the 9th
The 9th is 1.
is one, and then the other one. Would be, let's see here. Probably like the 28th. Because I'm gonna try and wait till,
In April?
no, May 9th of April,
Oh, it's the 9th of April.
28th of May. Yeah, no, it's not the 9th of March.
Yeah, that's tonight.
Tonight.
Or something. I put the 19th.
Yep, 19th of March.
19th of March? Okay, so we are doing the 19th of March, okay. Then the other one's the 9th of April?
9th of April, 28th of May.
28th of May.
And we can announce, these can be announced then on Sunday, right, so that other people are interested,
Movie night.
sort of. May not be high action. Oh, no, that's not true. If you like verbal jousting, it will be high action. 28th, it's the last Saturday of May.
If you don't have anything going on, any Saturday night.
And if it doesn't work for you and you still want to watch them, I'll loan them to you. Whoever. Okay.
Is William Wayne Craig in all 3 of the debates?
Yes, he is. He is the debater. The opposition will change in all 3. think in a lot of ways, he's probably the foremost apologist for Christianity right now, so.
Every generation gets one.
At least one, yeah, at least one. Okay. Well, let us start our discussion on the chapter. Okay, I think we'll just start with what did you think of this chapter? And what do you want more, what area do you want more understanding maybe? So that Cody can do some research for next week. Get back to you on
I
that.
think I tried to try my brain. Tried, but I think I probably read it through about 4 times and then it kept referring back to things that I had forgotten in the other chapter, so then I was going back through and marking those, and I hadn't been marking much with a pen, so now I'm trying to catch up on the things that I should underline and try to remember. But, yeah, I kind of began to understand it. I was trying to talk to my daughter about it too. Now, she is closer to the university scene and so forth, and she said, Mom, stick with what you know already. Which is, I've lived this long, I have this much evidence that God is with it, I've never been stranded, and then ending up with, if I can't, be persuasive enough, I just say, you know what? Your soul is in danger, and if I'm right and you're wrong, it's a matter of eternity that you live in hell. If you're right, I'm still okay. I've lived this long, I have all this evidence, and I have a blessed life. I win either way. But you gotta be thinking about it. I didn't get to that point with one person in my life. I don't know, maybe I'll see him in heaven, who knows? I prayed with him, prayed about him every once in a while. These people that kind of come to mind, I keep praying for. Because, they're nice people, but they just, not going to, believe in evolution and no God. Well, that's the bottom line. So I may stick with that. But on the other hand, I kind of think maybe God would bring somebody that might present something like this against, maybe I could remember enough to go through some of this. Right now, I don't know.
Fortunately,
And it's good.
Fortunately, it doesn't all depend on us, we do have the Holy Spirit, so that's.
Well, he makes divine appointments and he can make me recall.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I hadn't thought about what I would say, and yet I've said something that's been just right on for that person.
I've said some amazing things in my life, not many, but never on purpose. That's what troubles me.
Well, it would seem like evolution would be like the ping pong ball example that he gave, and evolution's the black ping pong ball, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just too far above pond scum for even hundreds of millions of years to do much with.
That's the thing, is it is very interesting because so many people think that belief in God is so crazy. Like, so crazy to think about that you believe in God. It seems like some crazy belief, right? But to take the flip side of it and say, okay, if you don't believe in God, then you have to present another viable option. And the evidence behind a different option is so much more crazy, requires so much more stretching and figuring and theorizing.
But no
right?
submissiveness.
Huh?
But no
Not
submissiveness to
yes.
God, so,
Yeah.
you know, that's why.
But that's the thing, I think a lot of people just say, well, believing in God is so irrational, so crazy, you know, and then they just stop there. They don't say, well, if that's not the case, then now present me the opposite, the argument that does support what you're believing. And they rarely get that far. It seems.
I think what they said at the end of the video was, I thought, quite good, that instead of just always being on the defensive, when someone says, I don't believe in God, then say,
What do you believe?
yeah, what do you believe in? What is your life beliefs based on, you know? And I just thought that was worth the price of admission, just, hey, you know, we don't always have to be just taking it. That there is a place where we can say to them, well, if you don't believe in God and God created the world, what do you believe? I'm willing to talk with you about what do you believe. Tell me what you believe. So I thought that was good. It's in the book too, I think, it says that. As Mark told us one day, go on the aggressive, don't just sit there.
I think one of the things that intrigued me the most was almost a side note in this. But he does talk about it in the questions as well, where he says, Dr. Craig states God is a remarkable simple entity. Why? When I first read that, I actually kind of reminded and wrote, what?
That's what I thought when he said it up there.
That's what I thought when I read it too. Simple.
Very complex, I thought.
He says it in page 32 of the study guide. He goes, it's under the who designed the designer. He goes, it's not an objection to the design hypothesis, since in order to recognize an explanation as the best, you don't need to have an explanation. Moreover, contrary to the claim that God is not a simple being, God, as an unembodied mind, is incomparably simpler than the universe. And that's what I went, what? The arrow up to that, and I was like, what does that mean? Because that's the first time I'd ever heard that one, actually. And so then, once again, I commend to you the Reasonable Faith app that you can download for free on your phone. Actually, this week I listened to 4 discussions with him and his host about the Kalam cosmological argument that we just have studied, that's come under recent attack on a popular YouTube video that's come out. Popular for what this kind of material is. I think it has over 50,000 views already, and it's only been out for a short period of time. But it's brought in like Roger Penrose and some of these, what atheists would consider some of their heaviest hitters in the scientific world and philosophical world, to try to show where the Kalam cosmological argument falls short. They don't do a good job of it, and Craig is able to say, well, no, this is the part that they're missing. They don't understand that. They're overstating this. They're contradicting each other here. And so there's 4 episodes on that. They're about 30 minutes long. They're interesting to listen to. So then, of course, when I read this, I took the app immediately, and there's a search you can do on it, and I was like, God is simple. And sure enough, something came up that was about 20 minutes long, where is God simple or complex? And he had just come back from sort of a debate, actually, at a Christian university, and they're Thomists, and they believe in, and Norman Geisler was a Thomist, who believed in the incredible simplicity of God, but even more simple than what William Lane Craig was talking about. And so he talks about that, and he was actually arguing against the position. And then there was another one that I was listening to when Christy came home. It was on the critique of Dr. Craig's view of divine simplicity. And so then, of course, he'll take a critique and he'll sort of defend his position. So I encourage you to get the app. What is it? It's Reasonable Faith. Reasonable Faith app.
Yeah, if you think this book is hard,
Yeah.
you should try Reasonable Faith.
Right, and you just need to be okay with the fact that they're gonna say some stuff you don't quite understand fully, you know? But the more you listen to this stuff, the more familiar you become with the terms, and you may have to look a few things up. I know I do all the time. But just that concept of God being simpler than the universe, and he explains that, and he explained it a little bit on the video, which I think kind of made enough sense to go, oh, okay, I get it. You know, because the universe is so full of all these moving parts and even the laws of nature and the constants that are required for it to exist, as where there's really nothing required in that sense for God to exist, right? So therefore, God is unchanging. The universe is constantly changing. Stars are being born, and all these things are taking place. And so his argument then is that God is an unembodied mind, is far simpler than the universe, but a mind can have incredibly complex thoughts, you know. So, and, I don't know, it's a bit of a mind bender for me, quite frankly, you know. And there's other people that in the Christian world that have different views, and so they'll talk about that. But that was something in this chapter that sort of, because I'm pretty familiar with the teleological argument, but that sort of was like, whoa, didn't see that coming.
Yeah. And he goes into that on page 123. It starts on 122, and then goes through 123 is where he, that's probably the big paragraph on his first full paragraph on 123 that starts with but. Where he talks, as a pure mind without a body, God is a remarkably simple entity. A mind or soul is not a physical object composed of parts. In contrast, the contingent and variegated universe with all its inexplicable constants and quantities, a divine mind is startlingly simple. Certainly such a mind may have complex ideas. It may be thinking, for example, of the infinitesimal calculus, but the mind itself is a remarkably simple spiritual entity. Dawkins has evidently confused a mind's ideas, which may indeed be complex, with the mind itself, which is an incredibly simple entity. So that's his main explanation here. The simplicity of mind, which, yeah, I have to say that was an interesting concept that I had not really.
My first reaction was Cody's, what? You know, not simple, but then.
But then it made me think of some of their explanations. So our explanation is unembodied mind. Let's think about their explanations. Let's start with, for further discussion, God is more complex than the universe, and an explanation should be simpler than what it explains. Is superstring theory simpler than what it's trying to explain? So, M theory, I don't think it is. I'm far from being an expert. But how can an explanation require 11 spatial dimensions in a universe where we live in 3 spatial dimensions? Isn't that a more complex explanation?
Yeah.
So if we go with what Dawkins said, then we have to, superstring theory, M theory, has to be tossed out. Now, you have to understand superstring theory or M theory is not the only string theory either. There's string theory, which has 10 spatial dimensions, one less, than superstring theory, which has 11, and it's M theory is equated with that. And then there's also, I wrote down the name of it. Bosonic string theory, which requires 26 spatial dimensions.
That's yours.
So to me, science requires, and this is the thing, is it doesn't always require an explanation that's simpler if the explanation can explain more, right? And this is the thing. So to me, you think about 11 spatial dimensions in order to explain really what exists in 3 spatial dimensions. That's where we function, that's where we live.
And their theories, they have no proof.
And that's the other thing about superstring theory is at this point, it is completely untestable. It's unobservable and untestable. So it is just that, pure theory. Pure theory.
But it sounds great.
It does sound great. But you gotta have your escape clause, whatever it is, so that you don't have to bend the knee to the creator. And then let's think about multiverse. Infinitesimal, infinite number of parallel universes. You telling me that's a simpler explanation than an unembodied mind? So I mean, like Dawkins' whole argument, when I started going through his premises, I was like, oh my word. He should not have ventured into philosophy. He should have stuck with his evolutionary biology, because his philosophy is poor at best.
And that's another interesting video we could watch maybe as a wrap up too. It's done by a theist, he's not a Christian, he's a Jewish man, but it's called Expelled No Intelligence Allowed, Ben Steins. And he actually does interview Dawkins. Dawkins is very hesitant to be interviewed by people with opposing views to him. He will not debate Craig in a one-on-one debate. I don't believe he has. No, we went to a symposium where they didn't actually debate. There was like 3 different sides. One side was string theory, the other, and it was kind of a weird setup.
Symposium, I talk, you talk.
That was Hitchens. Yeah.
So what does that say about his theories if he's not willing to debate?
Well, to be fair, some guys just aren't good debaters. Debating is a whole science on its own, if you will.
Yeah, it is.
And you can not have very good arguments and still look like you've won the debate if you're a better debater than the person sometimes who has better arguments. So, to be fair, Dawkins may just not be a very good debater. But Craig is not the type of debater, I don't believe, to exploit a person's weaknesses, but he will exploit the weaknesses in their argument. As where you would see Hitchens, he would actually exploit a person's personal weaknesses and sort of make them crumble in front of an audience, right? But Craig's not.
Yeah, Hitchens was very much into personal attacks.
Right, exactly. Which can be part of a debate. Yeah, very mocking. Because the debate's about winning the debate in a real debate. It isn't necessarily about, will the truth win out, and they can take that approach. I don't believe Craig ever takes any of that approach. He keeps it all professional. Yeah, Dawkins. His book, The God Delusion, was incredibly popular. I had conversations with a friend of mine who read it. He was kind of in support of the book. So we had some talks about that. Well, he says Dawkins' lack of philosophical depth is plainly on display here. He says also on page 123, he says Dawkins has evidently confused the mind's idea, which may indeed be complex with the mind itself. And then he says, Quentin Smith said that, oh no, that was in regard to Stephen Hawking's. The Dawkins argument may well replace Stephen Hawking's as the worst argument in the history of Western thought in regards to the belief in God, against the belief in God. Yeah, he's pretty tough on it, but I think deservedly so. Because I've seen videos of Dawkins being invited to speak at crowds who are atheists and telling them openly to mock and try to humiliate Christians. Those words, he said those words. You need to mock them. You need to make fun of them for their beliefs. That was shocking. I couldn't believe it.
How do you win that?
Well, he wasn't in a debate. He was just there encouraging atheists on how to behave.
But you're not going to change a person's belief by doing that to him.
Well, but what he wants to do is influence the social atmosphere.
Oh, Oh, he's done a pretty good job there then, I would guess.
Well, and so just like Craig talked about at the beginning of this, and the importance for challenging our minds in this way, is because if we can bring intellectual discourse into the public sphere about the fact that, Christianity actually does have intellectual chops, and scientific people can believe this, then it can help influence your culture. And Dawkins is simply doing the same thing in reverse. He wants to influence the culture away from anything that has to do with God. And so his way of doing that is, well, you're not going to be able to argue them out of their faith, so you just need to mock them into silence, right? That was Hitchens.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, the one debate that I remember watching was with Hitchens, and was with Hitchens.
And this was Dawkins.
He really was
himself.
very mocking, he was very mocking as well. And when if you didn't have the arguments that Lindley and Craig had, you could see how that would be, to the person just watching and not really understanding the depth of it. It almost seemed like you said that he was winning, that he was making the other person look very foolish. Or William and Craig was able to get up and basically say, well, you're joking, but this is the heart of the argument, and this is da-da-da-da-da, very systematically laid it out. And in the face of the intellect that he displayed, the mocking really,
Well, it
lost
fell
all
to
of
pieces
its,
and he
yeah,
quit.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for
But
the
if you don't
average,
have that, and you just have the mocking, it can be.
but the average person, that probably does work,
Sure.
to the people watching.
And then
Which
this
is what he's encouraging.
And then this is what Craig says at the beginning of our study: the more you know your stuff, the more you will not get off track when that stuff happens to you as a believer. If they start to mock you for your faith, or challenge you, or poke fun at you, really, I've had this happen at work at City of Salem. Guy came up to me, he says, hey, I seen something this weekend. He says that if you believe in a talking snake, and you believe in he kind of goes down some of these miraculous things in the Bible. He says that you must be crazy, And so we had a quick conversation about that. So that mocking of Christianity is out there. It's all over everything. It's on your TV shows. It's on, what's that show, The Big Bang Theory? They mock Christians regularly. And that's the goal, to take Christians who aren't secure in their knowledge of faith, because they are secure in their faith, but they can't really show how they know what they believe is true. They know what's true, they can't show it very well, and then mock them can't articulate, and then mock them into silence.
Yeah, you may not destroy their faith, but you mock them into silence,
Right.
so the faith doesn't get spread.
And that's why, what I was saying earlier, it just strikes me as why is it, as a general rule, the belief in God seems so crazy and out there, when the beliefs or the thoughts behind it are actually pretty solid. Yet for some reason, these alternate beliefs that require these crazy theories seem so much more widely acceptable and just more rational.
Because they're taught
And
in
it's just,
school.
and I just can't help but there's got to be a spiritual aspect to it, because
There
it's not
totally is.
it's not the premises, as he calls it. When he writes, he sets out these premises and goes da 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 da. When you're looking at it in that manner, the belief in God just stands up stronger.
Well, and you're right, and the
But for
truth,
some reason, that's just not the general. If you believe in God, you're kooky.
And the
If
truth-
you believe in science or
Yeah.
these alternate theories, for some reason, it's more logical or rational, and that's just a general thought.
but that's what they try to make you believe is the general thought. That's what they purport. But the truth is that thought's actually a lie. Because if you look at the world, is the majority of the world atheist or theist? Theist. Now, they may not be Christians. They may believe in Hindu gods. They may believe in other gods, in Muhammad. But the majority of the world is not atheist. The atheists are actually a very tiny portion of the world. So they may try to mock you into believing that what you think is crazy, but they're calling 90% of the world crazy then. So,
Well, everything seems to stem from what the kids grow up with in school. I mean, they're not teaching anything about God in public schools, so you can't expect.
and you know what, it's really the job of the parent.
Right. No, but that's why I think a lot of people believe the crazy stuff that's what you get taught in school. There's hundreds of billions of years old or whatever it is, and evolution. I mean, who'd you hear more of in school, Darwin or God?
That's what I was
You know?
gonna say,
gonna say, I mean,
They
your
are
parents
in
show
there
up, but they
all
have a
day,
lot of hours of
every day.
school that they're fighting
Yeah.
against.
Yeah,
And the parents are trying to, you know, provide a roof over their head and food on their plates, and they've got other things going on than constantly putting that opposite view in front of them.
And
I
how
wonder-
many of those people are actually attending church to get some inoculation against those ideas? It's a very small percentage that's been shrinking.
Do they even know themselves, really?
yeah, yeah.
And Shelby, you could probably speak to this, but I wonder how much parents even know about what is being taught in school.
Oh, they have since
You're
COVID.
learning science and math and English and things that are these non-spiritual minded concepts, but I really think there's a lot of very theological, you know, these other concepts that are interwoven in that learning that
Oh, yeah,
kids are being taught at school.
yes.
We never heard anything of one way or the other really much about what was going on in schools until COVID hit and they started doing the distance learning. And the parents were like,
This is what you're learning?
what the heck is this, you know? So,
What, there's a positive thing that came from COVID? I don't hear that very often.
Yeah. And, I don't realize that I'm old-fashioned. Was brought up with John Wayne and Jesus.
and
Sorry.
And Wally.
But, so, my thinking is, if you're gonna send your kid to public school, then you're gonna have to do the work of educating them in Christianity. And if that means that one of the two parents has to stay home and you have to live in a smaller house and only have one vehicle, then so be it.
Bye-bye, Miss Mary.
So,
That's what that song's about, right?
because you have to decide what your priorities are.
That's why we send our kids to private school.
Right, and then, so if you're gonna send that, do that, and it's expensive,
And you're both working.
then you're both working. However, some of that responsibility that you maybe would place on yourself, you now shifted to the school, although I'm not sure how well Christian schools do in some of this regard, but of course, far superior to public school.
And far superior to most parents, honestly.
Far superior to most Christian parents, yes. But that's priority. Is the 2,000 square foot house the priority? So you both have to work, send your kids to public school, you don't have time to spend with them, to teach them, and you don't have time to be taught yourself. Maybe make it Sunday morning, but you certainly don't have time for any extra study or anything. Or is it more important to live in a 1,300 square foot home, even though it's a little tighter? Still have 2 bathrooms though. And then have time to teach your kids, have time to go to study, have time to be an effective Christian who is educating the next generation of Christians, so that when they face the opposition that they will face, public school, university, workforce, they're prepared to give an answer. And so, I mean, we're all here, I think, because we think it's a priority. I mean, we like spending time together, obviously. But we think it's a priority to be prepared for this. We think it's a priority to increase our knowledge and understanding of God and who He is. That's why we're here. And I think that unfortunately, the culture of the West has so influenced the church that we think that the world's priorities should be our priorities. Right?
Let's just say,
The big house, the fancy vacations, and I'm not opposed to fancy vacations.
Amen.
Don't
Or a
get me
bigger
wrong.
house.
Amen,
Or a bigger house.
Or a bigger house, because I would like a slightly bigger house than where I'm at right now.
they're still sending him to public school.
And I still get to go to public school, yes, yeah, I'll tell you. And that's part of this, like Eileen was saying that she's read this chapter, what, 4 times?
Probably,
Yeah,
and parts of it, probably more than that.
and despite that, she's probably still not an expert on superstring theory or the multiverse.
I didn't ever remember hearing about string theory at all, ever.
But you pick
And
something.
he calls it M theory, which is another name for superstring theory, M theory.
The M theory, multi,
Yeah, theory of everything,
theory of everything.
yeah, it's another word, another name
That's
for
the
it.
total.
Yeah,
There's too many terms for me to remember.
There is a lot of them.
there is a lot of terms,
I have not heard
yeah.
them before, or don't remember having heard them before.
Well, and superstring theory has just arisen in what, the last 30 years?
Yeah, see, and I went to school, university and all,
31 years ago.
over 31 years ago. Yes, over 31 years ago.
So.
And I didn't have to fight against that. In general, most people didn't talk even about evolution. I had one class where one professor talked about it. I still don't know whether he was an evolutionist or not. It just was thrown out there to us.
Yeah.
And I was living at home at the time. My mother said, well, learn it enough to pass the test, and then, forget it.
Well, the thing about evolution is there's no strings attached to it. Personally, they don't require anything of you to believe it. You don't have to change your lifestyle. I mean, it's just kind of like the rest of
No, in fact, some Christians believe that
You might,
that's how God
if you actually believe what they teach, you would change
developed
your
the universe
lifestyle.
and all of us.
He is the,
You would be a much more violent, cruel, evil, wicked person if you really believed what they teach. Because you would be concerned about the number one principle of evolution, survival of the fittest, which means you would be concerned about your survival chiefly.
In fact, Darwin
And you would
says
do
that.
whatever,
in
you would do
his
whatever
book.
it takes to survive.
You can do that.
That's part of the title.
Well,
of his
no, I mean,
book.
this would go beyond. So we understand what evolutionists mean by survival of the fittest is it's the person who passes on their DNA the most.
So if you're the most dominant, that means you need to be impregnating the most dominant females.
Yes.
And it also means then that you would be opposed to the care for the sick and the weak and the mentally handicapped and so on and so
So
on.
that sounds like Hitler.
Well,
yeah.
what fuels that fire, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if people actually lived out the theories that they espouse, this world would be a horrible place. But even Dawkins doesn't want people to live out this theories that he espouses. Right, so.
But, yeah.
So an atheist isn't any better of an atheist overall than a lot of people that say they're Christians are a Christian, because they're not living out the life. I mean,
There's a lot of nominal atheists out there.
Yeah, exactly, so. And he does point out, it's a side note in the book on 112 here, and I think it's important to remember. An end run around evolution, in a little margin.
Yeah.
Notice that by focusing on cosmic fine-tuning, this argument does an end run around the whole emotionally charged issue of biological evolution. The argument from fine-tuning, if successful, will show that the evolution of intelligent life anywhere in the cosmos depends upon the design of the initial cosmic conditions. Any design arguments based on the origin of life, the origin of biological complexity, the origin of consciousness, and so on will simply layer on more improbability, making it all the more unlikely that all of this can be explained apart from a designer. So, I mean, this argument, you don't even have to bring up evolution.
And I frankly don't think you ever really should when you're debating. If someone wants to talk about this stuff, it's really not that relevant.
kind of a rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, it's a red herring, as they say. And like you said, and I think one thing it's important to get from this chapter is that the argument for fine tuning It's 3 steps. It doesn't necessitate, you're not saying because you believe the universe is fine-tuned that you believe it was designed. You're simply agreeing with what the majority of science says out there, that the universe is fine-tuned. That's not really a controversial statement.
Yeah.
Then how did it get that way, right? How is any universe fine-tuned? Chance, physical necessity, or design? Those are the only 3 options available to anybody out there, you know? And then work your way. And the big one today is chance. Nobody that I'm aware of is really arguing for the physical necessity of the fine-tuning of the universe, right? Because as we've learned, physical necessity means that it couldn't have been any other way, and I think he does a pretty good job of painting to us the modern scientific view that, well, it could have been different ways, and most of them are not life-supporting, you know? So then that leaves them with chance, and so then I think we've seen how far they reach into the options of chance to avoid the design thing. But there's some good questions that would be fun to talk about next week.
Next week, yes. Because it's time to quit this week.